Alright, thanks everyone for being here. We're stoked about this. This is something I've been working on for a while. So here I am. So yes, very, very excited to share this stuff with you. I hope you'll like it, and we'll see how it goes. So IoT has been really trendy. Brian Krebs has been talking about it, and what really started everything is well, for me at least, it's more than this. It has been for 2 years, 3 years now, reverse engineering embedded systems. But what really crystallized it in the public eye is Brian Krebs when he published that OVH got a 1.5 terabyte per second DDoS attack from the Mirai and all of that group. And so this is where it really started happening. What I liked about OVH's disclosure is that they were really technical, showing stuff, and not just like, oh, the world is falling apart, we have no logs or no stats. He went on Twitter with screenshots with like this geeky, you know, Greg Hawk said, and all the sysadmin were like, this is the shit, this is what I do every day. And so you see here, the culmination of the attack is like some of the cameras that were DDoSing them had a very large internet pipes, and so it was really attacking them massively. And so he culminated that the botnet is around 150,000 devices, cameras, DVRs, and stuff like that, all with a connection between 1 and 30 megabit per second. This culminated into this 1.5 terabit per second, attack. So this is where, you know, the IoT stuff gets problematic. Why I'm here, I've been talking about this for a while. So this was 2 years ago at Hackfest. So internet of threats kind of stuff. I hope like it's not again another IoT talk about the same bullshit that we hear, like IoT is insecure and shit like that. I mean, this has been done by very good people, very good talks. Me, I'm really on the focus on the malware and what's happening and what is actually bad for us right now, not speculation on what it could be or what it will become. And so the agenda for today is when we are hunting IoT malware, the specifics, what are the problem areas. The problem is around collecting threats for us, which is different than AV, which we'll cover. Honeypots are a big part of it to gather these threats. Then once you have the samples, you have reverse engineering problems, which are different than Windows reverse engineering problems. Then you track a botnet, you run an infected host, you collect data, you have data analytic problem. I'll show you some 3 cases of malwares that I've studied in the past few years that are kind of IoT style samples. And then some takeaways and stuff that we can do as developer, as buyers of products to make sure that the world will be a better place eventually. But first I wanted to say that I love Hackfest. So for me, Hackfest 9, it's my 7th Hackfest that I am here. And I think it's my 5th time speaking and or paneling and or stuff like that. And so this year I will also do the animation of the OWASP CTF. We're doing a lot of stuff this year, and it's just so much fun, so much cool people, and the CTF and everything's been growing. It's amazing. So who am I? I'm a cybersecurity researcher at GoSecure. I co-founded MontréHack. We've been doing this for 5 years. Next February it will be our 5th year. Every month we do a technical CTF problem that we solve. I'm really proud of that. VP training of NorthSec, and I run the Hacker Jeopardy. I write the question, I run the show for, it's our 6th, 7th year. So I really love this industry. I love communicating and I love meeting people, so don't hesitate to come and talk. Now, I'm going fast because there's a lot of stuff here. The problem area. So Internet of Things, this kind of conflated terms where we bundle everything in. What I like to define it is an embedded system. So embedded system means small CPU, small memory, small cost. Small cost means you don't have a lot of money to put on security and stuff like that. The devices tend to be as generic as possible. The architectures are non-x86 usually. They are networked, so they have either Wi-Fi or Ethernet connectivity. They generally run Linux, and this is, again, for cost reasons. So running the same platform means that attackers can, with one executable, affect a lot of platforms, which makes it bad in this context. And also, no user interface. So no user interface is kind of important here because for threats or threat analytics, it matters. So where it gets really problematic from a malware botnet perspective, again, I want to emphasize on that, is when you have an administrative access, like telnet or SSH exposed. If you have this, and when you connect, you have a limited CLI, like Cisco switches, for example, it's less of a problem than if you get into a busybox shell, where you can run ping and run several commands, wget, fetch, or stuff like that. So a full user LAN is worse than having a custom shell. Okay, you don't see that, good. Having pop-ups here. Default global credential, this is something from a past era. It shouldn't be that way anymore. For routers, manufacturers are able to do per device password, so why not the administrative have a per device password? People don't understand, like, yes, if you print it on it, people will have access. The problem is not that people in your house is attacking you. The problem on the internet is people from remote is attacking you. So printing the fucking password on the sticker is not bad. It's not the threat model you're looking after, right? So again, something that can be plugged directly on the internet is more problematic because it can be accessed by the whole internet. And something that has value of being plugged on the internet, like an IP camera, is a worse problem, right? Also, when you think internet, like we're 1 billion people online, so of course people will plug stuff backwards. So if you think, oh yeah, but we firewall from the WAN, it's okay, but people will put the LAN port exposed on the internet and then telnet or SSH is available. And when you think, oh, it will be, 1% of the people who will make that mistake, well, 1% of 1 billion is a lot of people. Still. So the general purpose user interface, what I'm saying is like, yes, of course there are web interfaces or there are mobile interfaces, but to analyze threats and to be on the forefront of finding samples and stuff like that, you need really like we have on our common systems. You need, an access where you can trust that you're not lied by the environment or the malware. So you cannot really investigate without a user interface of some sort. This is a problem I will attack on later. So there's another thing, like there is no third-party software except from maybe like the NAS. Some NAS have a kind of an ecosystem, an app ecosystem. But besides that, I mean, there is no endpoint security, there is no AV. And I know people will bash on AV and next generation endpoint, whatever. But the thing is, this is right now on Windows why the malware, not the malware industry, but the anti-malware industry, I guess, is on the forefront of defending. Is because they do those near-miss signatures and they collect threat proactively on where you run AV. And this is why they do their malware research. And this is why they're able to say, oh, in Ukraine there is XYZ campaign. It's because they run AV in that country and they collect the files that the people get. And so this, because on IoT, since there is no third-party software, this doesn't happen. Which means that we need to be really creative in order to be there before the bad guys are there, or at least to monitor what they are doing right now. So this is in the problems list, but again, I don't want to say I would like to see Kaspersky for routers. This is not what I'm saying. It's just a reality. So it's different on IoT than desktop, mobile, and even server-side threats because on desktop and mobile, you bring the bad stuff in, and there is an ecosystem of software which can collect it. There is no UI on IoT, and it's hard to reach the devices by the right channels to have access to the files. Also, people don't realize they are infected, so a lot of some people will have their router infected, but as long as their internet works fine, they don't really care and they don't really know about it, which is fine. I mean, I might be infected right now at home and I wouldn't know. I would reboot my router, and if the threat doesn't persist, then I would be fine until I get reinfected, something like that, right? So, attacking the problems. As we said, no UI, no automated samples collection. So what are the ways to collect samples? Well, we could solder UART port on routers, and then have a shell, hopefully, a debug or JTAG access, and then look at the file system and look at files. But obviously, this doesn't scale, right? It requires hardware, and you cannot make it everywhere, and you can do it at home, like hobby style. Also, it doesn't work well on hardened devices. So anything like dipped in epoxy, it wouldn't work, right? Because you would need to scratch it. Well, some people, like recon level people, could do it, but this is not something that would scale and would be easy to do. So then, again, what you can do is ask your friends for files, like, hey, you have a router, can you look inside it? But then they would need to do the soldering and all that stuff. And then it doesn't scale. It's the same problem, right? So then there is finding a way in. So if the malware gets in via Telnet or SSH, you can say, hey, why not me? I can get in via Telnet and SSH. And I can even use their list, because I have some of the lists that they use to get in. Use the default creds, right? But then you reuse that path. But you have the problem of connecting at the same privilege level of the malware. So for now, it would work well, right? Because they don't expect researchers to do that. But in 1 year, 2 years, then what they could do is kill the official Telnet client daemon, kill the official SSH daemon, and then emulate one. Give you one where you would not see the files, right? They could do something like that. But the real problem is it's illegal, right? I could be doing what the malware does and connect to everyone's routers that are exposed and badly protected, but I would have like blogging about it. Maybe I would get some like, hey, are you sure you're doing this? Yeah, okay. Yeah, like making sure it's not in Canada. Yeah, okay. It's cool. So I'm not doing it, right? I tried hunting on VirusTotal also. So wrote some Yara rules to match ARM and ELF headers and MIPS architecture. But then I was getting a lot of people, a lot of the like LS. And you reverse engineer a statically compiled LS, and then you realize it's LS. It's kind of shitty. Like you put this on your timesheet and you're not proud of yourself, right? Took me a day to figure out it's LS. So there's that. And there's also a feedback loop problem. It's like the samples that you've studied or you blogged about, people kind of, some variants of it get published. So you kind of always study the same Lizard Squad and or Linux Smooth type stuff because your Yara rules are built to collect these. So you're not finding the new and interesting stuff. You're always looking at the same things. So what we decided to do is we decided, OK, we will do honeypots, low interaction honeypots, because I'm too lazy to manage a high interaction one. And I'm going to have it mimic a system that I want, I know is targeted. So kind of going, one up from what the bad guys are doing type of stuff. Problem is honeypot are complex. So honeypot, quickly, is a system that lures attackers into showing how they operate. So they give you those famous TTPs, so tools, tactics, and procedures, and including files. So if they copy files or whatever they do, you get it. So you pick components and architecture and you deploy it. So what we kind of was our choice. So we were clear that we would go low interaction because high interaction is dangerous quickly. So low interaction meaning that they are in the matrix, like they can, oh, am I, and then they can test it, and you can fake until, you get the files and stuff. But our real struggle was, OK, do we do hardware since we're going after IoT, or do we do software? And so here are what the choices or the things we had to think about. Maintenance, monitoring. So hardware, you have important limitations. You need to do your man in the middle in front. You need to maintain it. You need to buy the stuff. So instead, And I wanted that research to be geographic. Kind of expected the threat actors to be different based on where you are. So Brazil's malware on Windows has always been really different than you know, the rest of the world or the Russian bankers and stuff like that. So I kind of expected this from IoT malware. Turns out it's not different, unfortunately, but I wanted that, so for us, hardware was not a good approach, right? I couldn't, like, I'm just GoSecure, I'm not a Fortune 500, so I cannot ship routers around and say, hey, plug this, and, you know, run this man-in-the-middle thing in front, and send me the PCAPs and shit. So we decided to go software-based instead. Software is slower, but doesn't really matter, and even slower means more realistic in the IoT sense, right? But it can be fingerprinted, so you really need to do this kind of, okay, they connected, but they didn't drop a binary, what happened, and then adapt based on it. For some malware, it turns out that the problem is they don't even implement the protocol really well. So if, for Linux Moose, if I would give a proper telnet handshake, they would disconnect, they would drop. Because they didn't understand the meta character of telnet. And so what I turned out doing is patching the code so that it wouldn't send stuff just for this botnet to get to, you know, infected by them. Which is kind of weird in a sense. So we went with the low interaction, software-based honeypot, which we deployed in the cloud. Some providers we had fun with. At some places, I ran a TCP dump, and I got the traffic of everyone on the same physical server than me. I was like, I'm not sure that this is supposed to happen. So it's always something cool to, you know, to do and realize when you deploy this type of stuff. So the low interaction, another key thing is you're less likely to become part of the problem. So spreading an infection, sending email, DDoSing other targets. So for us, it was a better deal, right? This is the architecture we came up with. This is for the specific Linux Moose that I talked about 2 years ago here, and among other threats. What we wanted to do is to run the actual sample. So on one side, we have a QEMU ARM with the sample on it. But on the other side, we have our low interaction honeypot, which is the one getting connections and getting file transfers and stuff. So on the left-hand side is the QEMU. Right-hand side is our CARI. So we use CARI for honeypot, which is a SSH, now telnet honeypot. For this specific case, I needed to do HTTPS interception and decryption, and I used man-in-the-middle proxy to do that, and firewall rules to redirect that to the right place, and use dump-cap in front of that to capture everything because, you know, collecting packets is cool. I named almost all of it. For QEMU, I used the Debian images. Since we were only running samples and not getting actual connections, the fingerprinting resistance was not that important for me, and it worked pretty well, right? And I had GDB, I had, like, you know, a full Linux, so I could do debug the samples and stuff like that. CARI, I like because it's written in Python, twisted, so it's really easy to modify. You can modify output of commands. You can, the Lexer is kind of simple, the things that interprets the command line. So it's good, but there was no telnet support at the time that I needed telnet support. So what we did is we sent a pull request. I implemented telnet. I thought it would be like, I said like, oh, everything is so well done, you know, with heritage and stuff. I just need to plug this thing at this layer and it will be all right. And so it will be, I don't know, like 2 days of coding. Turned out it took me 4 weeks, but I'm glad I did it. So I sent the pull request last summer, and so this is just before Mirai. So this is when you feel kind of cool. I contributed to everyone tracking Mirai, because Mirai was tracked heavily through CARI. But at the same time, I was not the one tracking Mirai, so I kind of missed the opportunity to, I guess, get some views on our blog or something like that, but I did the code instead. For man-in-the-middle, I use man-in-the-middle proxy. I tried BetterCap, which is a very good pen testing tool, I think, and also does the IP tables for you. So some, for people in pen test engagement, I think BetterCap is a more turnkey tools. But man-in-the-middle proxy, BetterCap doesn't have any binary level logging, so you cannot go back. You only have the output in the terminal. Man-in-the-middle proxy has a log that is binary safe, logs a lot of metadata, and has been stable, no crashes. While BetterCap, I had crashes. But you need to do the IP tables, as I said. But the library is really high level, a very well done, well designed tool. I recommend it. For packet capture, I prefer to use dumpcap over TCP dump. And I recommend people doing automatic rotation because whenever you do some TCP analysis, you need to reconstruct the whole flow, and it will go through the whole PCAP. And so if you have really, really large PCAPs lasting weeks, it just doesn't scale. If you do daily rotation, you can then pass a GNU parallel, some parallelization tools to process them, one core at a time. So it really scales better. Don't forget to, what I recommend anyway, and you can do what you want, but this is experience, this is why I'm here, right? Put your SSH on another port, like a really bastard port, and then filter it out so that when you rsync or when you download your stuff, it doesn't make the PCAP bigger because the transfers are in the PCAP, but then you transfer that PCAP and kind of stuff. So yeah, avoid that. The full packet capture also is interesting because sometimes people will release some research and then you're like, oh, nice, I have a full packet capture and I can reproduce that research. One thing that the people at Botconf did, the Kehoe team, is they deployed several honeypots. They collected so when you do a DDoS, you spoof the source, if it's a UDP-based DDoS. And so they collected the replies of the server where the source was spoofed, and they correlated that with the sequence numbers and window size and stuff, and they classified botnet based on that information, which is really, really geeky and technical, and I was really, I didn't do it, unfortunately, yet. But the fact that I have full packet capture, I can reproduce that research if I wanted to. So this is why more data is always better than less data, right? So the reverse engineering problems that we have, the biggest problem is everything everything well done is statically linked and stripped. So statically linked means that the libraries are inline. This includes the C library. So you go, it really blows up the amount of code and the complexity that you have to look at. And strip means no debugging symbols. So you don't have the names of the variables and stuff like that, that kind of metadata. So all of the code is bundled together up to, down to the syscalls, right? So it's a lot of stuff to reverse engineer. So just to give you a sense, this is Linux moves binary. So what I highlighted at the bottom is, so what we've seen is a few of the functions, and there are 500 of them. So these are all unidentified, unknown code that you need to look at, 500 functions. And you start to do some analysis. Now I've put in we don't see that well, right? Anyway, it's just to show that it's complex, so I guess this is good that you don't see anything. But OK, so this is the printf family of calls, and you have sprintf and printf and vprintf calling underscore vf printf internal. There are the names here because this is the library with a symbol that I compiled, but it was in malware. I did reverse thoroughly this thing, and so this is the broader family of call around the printf syscall and the printf family of calls. And the only syscall in all of this is puts. Puts is to print on a terminal on Linux, the puts syscall. So you go really there is a lot of dependencies, a lot of stuff calling each other, a lot of code reuse. And then you're like, OK, I need to drill into a function. And this is the vf printf internal function. So all of that code you need to look at, and everything, every block is several lines of assembly, and you need to figure all of that out to understand. And in the end, you're like, oh, I spent 2 days, this is only printf, right? And then you feel bad and you like, yeah, you're like employment. The ecosystem on Linux specifically, and this is why it's a specific problem to that area, makes it worse for reverse engineers because GCC changes version all the time. They optimize and they tweak and they change the way that they generate assembly. libc are changing. There is no or little IDA flirt signatures. Some of the major distros, desktop Linux, will have some flirt signatures, but others, the embedded stuff, I never seen one match. And there are various C libraries like uclibc, eglibc, muzzles, and stuff like that. So it's really an ecosystem hard when you look at it from a reverse engineering standpoint. What we did and failed at it is to try to match syscalls with an IDA script. So I extracted all the syscall numbers from the kernel source code. I wrote, a Python array and a thing. I wrote an IDA Python script. Would add in a comment like, oh, this syscall is this call. But again, the libc is so big and the stuff is so high level that you spend a lot of time and there is too much code to reverse engineer. Marc Etienne, one of a former colleague of mine at ESET, had an idea. He said, why don't you build the C library with symbols and then use binzif to import that stuff into IDA? I was like, you know what, it can work maybe. So then we can focus on malware code. And this is what happened. So this is a binzif output. On the left-hand side, this column here is the name of the sample I was reverse engineering. And here is the libc I compiled. And don't tell that to the malware guys, but the reason I was able to compile the exact same thing is because they left it in the source, in the code. It was like GCC version something. OpenWRT toolchain, revision of the OpenWRT, checkout from SVN. So I was able to SVN check out exactly the same tag, compile everything, but don't tell it to them because they will strip it, right? And then I will have to fucking guess. It will be complicated. So because of that, I had 99% confidence, 99% similarity, and I was able to import strncopy, fgets, and all of that stuff. And then the malware was malware. It was no longer the C library. More than 225 functions were mapped with high confidence, high similarity. Turned out it was uclibc 0.9.33 from the OpenW toolchain. And this is, again, a Linux Moose sample. The other problems is architecture, storage, so NVRAM, you need to simulate that. I know there was a training this week about attacking embedded devices, and I think that they cover some of the stuff that I even haven't done yet, like emulating NVRAM and making sure you can dynamically debug, stuff like that. I would love to actually get more knowledge on that. I did most of the stuff statically because of the complexity of running it or doing it dynamically. But now they started doing some packing. Before, I never saw packed samples, and now they have packed samples. So I need to handle these problems eventually. Now that we have a botnet that runs on our honeypot and stuff, our new problem is data analysis. So we have PCAPs, we have logs, we collected them for months. We've done some other talks, we forgot, then we rsync everything, and then we look at it. It's distributed, so several servers. So what we started doing is using a centralized single server where we pulled all the files. I want my honeypots to be deniable, like non-reputable to our organization, so that if someone gains access to it, that they're not linked to us. So this is why I use this pull versus push model, right? I always pull from the honeypots. We use IPython notebook as an IDE that we run on the server. The server has a lot of core, a lot of RAM, so it's better than doing it on our desktops. Like with PCAPs, we generate CSV files with the binary data in it. We process it with Python, and CSV reader from Python is like, I think, 1,000 times slower than the CSV reader from Panda. So Panda is really a good library if you want to do those large-scale analysis. Parallelize CPU or IO bound tasks with GNU Parallel. If you haven't played with GNU Parallel, you should. It's amazing. And it's a drop-in replacement of Xargs. So any workload that you throw Xargs at, you throw at GNU Parallel, and it will maximize the amount of cores that are used. Like it will see, oh, there are 12 CPU cores. I will run 12 jobs, one besides each other. It can do memory monitoring. It can kill tasks, reschedule tasks that were killed and stuff. It's an amazing tool. And then use specific tools for specific problems, right? T-Sharks for PCAP, you know, Explorer and Wireshark, and then script with T-Shark. MITM proxy has been a really, really fun library to play with for HTTPS data to analyze also. So now it's story time. Let's go through our cases that we've analyzed. Lizard Squad. So I spoke about Lizard Squad, I think, here 2 years ago, but so you can take a nap during this if you've seen that talk. So Lizard Squad is actually GAFGit, the sample, and the source code was leaked. So it's everything now. Kton, Hydra, Re-Kton, GAFGit. GAFGit is a misnomer because the real string in the malware was gayfag. But the industry didn't find it was a cool name to give a signature name, so they said GAFGit instead. The malware people are so offensive. They're not inclusive at all. So this is Lizard Squad's Twitter images. It's a black hat hacking group. They were big in the DDoS scene. They were the ones who DDoSed PlayStation Network and Xbox Live in Christmas 2014. On Christmas Day, like fucked every kid's dream. They got, I don't know if everyone knows this, but when I found out, I found it funny, so I tell that story all the time. But what got them into trouble, like DDoSing, I mean, it was bad, but no, the law enforcement were not really after them. Or, I mean, like if they would fell on a silver plate in front of them, they would have, you know, handcuffed them and stuff. But they were not actively after them. But what happened is they started doing bomb threats. So one of the threats they did is they called the American Airlines and they said the vice president of Sony in charge of the gaming group has a bomb in his luggage. He's on this plane and stuff because the guy tweeted that he was traveling for work or whatever. Anyway, so they took down the plane. They force landed the plane to hunt his stuff and everything. And he was treated like a terrorist. And it was all a prank done by the Lizard Squad people. So this got them into trouble. The FBI looked like a fool. And the Sony guy sued the FBI for having him look like a fool. So a big clusterfuck. In 2016, 6, 7, or 8 of them were arrested because of the follow-up of what happened with the bomb threats and stuff. And they were running a DDoS for hire service called Lizard Stressor. So you could, sign up and then, pay some money to get some people DDoSed. And when you play video games, I think it's a cool service because, when you're losing, you can just disconnect the other guy and then, I don't know, I guess you get half the points or something. It's been a while since I've gamed. So in a nutshell, they are cyber rascals, or as I would say in Québécois, des cyberchenapans. A joke. A joke I said 2 years ago here. So Krebs even acknowledged that Lizard Stressor were running on hacked routers. So it's pretty clear. And even then, I have something coming up, a screenshot of them acknowledging that it's running on embedded systems. But the malware, as I said, Kton, Hydra, Powbot, it's everything because the source code was leaked. And so there's various forks, and it's still active. Even though some people were put in jail, right now it's still a very active threat. It has a telnet scanner, it floods via various methods, and I found one sample that had a Quake 3 flooding mechanism, so you would send a message to a Quake 3 server and the reply would be large, so an amplification attack, and they would support that. They run on Super H, which is like what runs on Super H? And this is like the kids, like YOLO, like a GCC supports Super H, will have Super H samples, right? I'm sure they have no victim, but I guess they do Super H. This is in the server source code. So they have this like now with refrigerator support kind of bragging. So they knew what they were doing, right? The attack vectors, it's mostly credential brute forcing, SSH telnet, but they do have a shell shock. So shell shock looks like this, the classic, you know, empty function, and then wget. And the wget script just downloads every architecture, shmud, and make it executable, and then try to run it. See, it's a really, you know, big hammer approach, like, we'll try everything, and we'll see what sticks. And it's good, because you get to reverse engineer the architecture that you're more familiar with. You have an x86 version. That's kind of you, because I have IDA Pro with the x86 decompiler. Thank you. They have variants that supports HTTPS, and there is also a Cloudflare protection bypass in one of the samples I found. This is what it looks like. So they fingerprint the server to see if it's the Cloudflare Nginx, and then they implemented in C something that will resolve the JavaScript challenge that the Cloudflare platform uses. So they deassemble the various bits of the Cloudflare challenge, and then they compute like a normal JavaScript interpreter would do, and then they are able to reply to the challenge. So this allows them to do, well, in these, the guys using these samples, and this is so advanced that I think we're no longer dealing with the Sébastien Appin crew, right? We're with another group that is more sophisticated. But they are able then to do application layer or level attacks on Cloudflare protected hosts. Are they sophisticated? Yes and no. That database was leaked. Everything was in plain text. Password, no hashing. Everything was just like, bleh. So sophisticated, yes and no. And then when you log on the IRC Command and Control, you know how many bots are there, and you even have the operator handles. So they don't, like, they hide the bots, but I mean, this still like kind of, ugh. And so I stayed on that channel for a few weeks, and all of the targets was either DSL lines or cable lines, so end users, probably gamers, enemies, right? Or game hosting companies, so some EVE Online stuff, Blizzard stuff, like targets of kids, right? So this is very prevalent, and it's like, so I was at Geek Week last week, and I deployed the Honeypot, and we got, again, even though it's been ages, a shit ton, a metric shit ton of samples around the Lizard Squad group. So this is still a thing. Linux Moose. I think I need to go faster. Linux Moose is a botnet that is selling fraudulent followers on Instagram mostly. I've been tracking that threat and reversed it for a while now. So first blog post was in 2015 when I was at ESET. Then we built this architecture that I showed you earlier to be able to attack the HTTPS. So here we have the classic unaffected version, where the HTTPS is still a solid purple, still valid. Then what we did is we weakened it. So the HTTPS from after our attack is still valid, but before you would get a certificate error, of course. So what I decided to do is, I will spoof a nice certificate. And so I decided to install a CA of my own CA, of course, not a vendor CA, but Checkpoint maybe, you know, or Fortinet. So I mimicked security appliances that were known to be doing SSL interception in the hope that the guys would, you know, be social engineered by my clever, you know, idea. What happened is nothing, like there was not even a single check. So their library or the code they're using is just, you know, certificate errors. Fuck it, YOLO, we need to do our fraud, right? And so I was like, our attack worked. I was like, okay, I haven't spent all those months to waste. That's good. So we did publish, and this is why I was not here at Hackfest last year, is we were speaking about this at Black Hat Europe, our ego market finding around Linux Moose. So I encourage you to go on our blog and read the paper. It's good. Quickly, we found that Linux moves is stealthy, they adapt. So I've been after 3 different layers of CNC, and they are still changing. Whenever we publish something, they change something. There are no direct victims because people pay for a service, which is I want some more followers, and they get it for a while after, well, some followers disappear, but I mean, they still got it for the time that they need it. So the only real victims is the people that are fooled by accounts with a lot of followers. We found the people paying, and it's like models, and it's a really cool story and talk that we gave, and it's online if you want to see it. Another key factor is that they are hiding in plain sight. So they probably brag to their, you know, parents and relatives that, yeah, so I'm in social media marketing, and this is what I do, and I can pay taxes, and I charge legitimate credit cards. So any other, like the DDoS people, the ad fraud people, they all need to launder their money, you know, and go through hoops and have really difficult things to do in order to be able to have a Jaguar. But if you're in fucking social media marketing, then, oh yeah, social media. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is rich, so you must be rich also. It sounds legit, right? And so this is what these botnet guys are doing, and it pisses me off. And they do some money, and pisses me off because law enforcement just doesn't care. Yeah, I can't get their attention. They're like, yeah, you know, your shit or ransomware. You know, I have to choose. I guess ransomware is important. Chaos. So, and maybe ransomware on IoT. Maybe that will be my, like, in 2 years, I'll do ransomware on IoT. Your router is fucking encrypted. No one cares. Chaos. Chaos is something we collect this summer with an intern from Germany. It was a very nice thing that he did. So Chaos, when it contacts, it does this thing where it tries to fingerprint you. We were able to catch it because we were, again, you know, proactive, not being detected. It uses a raw socket, and it checks the packet, and it does a connect back. So even if you're heavily firewalled, or even if your port that are exposed are already served by another binary, since it's a raw socket, it will still work and do its connect back. So it's kind of clever. I never saw that before. It has a kind of a homemade crypto with, you know, generate some noise, share some of it, and then generate keys based on that. It's kind of nice, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going quickly through it. But it has integrity checking, and this is the Chaos is only the connect backdoor part of the operation. There is more to it that we are going to publish before the end of the year. So basically, the crypto is not good, but it's good enough so that if you have the full trace and you have the sample, you can reverse everything and you can convert all of the communication back to plain text. But if you don't have the sample, then it's kind of hard, and I think this is why they've done it, so that it wouldn't show up as oh, here we are a connect backdoor, and this is system that is run. So kind of, you know, just a step ahead of other groups. But we're gonna publish about it. Some future work around what I want to do is I would like, so right now, since the IoT is evolving, there is no more the time where you would get a sample like right off the bat with everything. What we see now is droppers on MISP or on ARM, which is something Windows has been doing for ages, Windows Malware Author. But now what I would like to do is run the droppers in some safe way where I wouldn't execute necessarily the dangerous payload, but I would at least get the stage 2. So this, I think with QEMU and maybe SecComp, I can accomplish something like that. Something I want to do. If you're interested, I would be happy to collaborate on that. Emulate more type of devices and like smart TVs and stuff like that. Like people say, the smart TV is a target, you know, and the CIA, they have exploits on smart TV, but this is not stuff that's scaled at all. It was really implants that of people targeted. So I want to see if we will see a botnet or something around that. So, and this is kind of simple and cool. You just take the firmware, you binwalk it, you extract the file system, you mimic the file system inside Cowrie, you mimic the output of some commands, It's kind of fun to do, so this is why I want to look at it. For data analysis, I don't have an ELK setup still at work, and I should get to it. At Geek Week, I played with people who were, and Jason is here actually. He's running the social engineering show, but they have a full ELK stash, and I would like to, make more use of that and present fancy dashboards to management so that they come in my office and they're like, oh yeah, world map, that's cool, fancy, funding, yay, and stuff like that. So I need that, right? I want to play with Moloch from AOL, which is a PCAP grinding tool, very interesting, very well built, again on Elasticsearch and stuff like that. And I would like to have a higher level construct around IPython for extractions of stuff that I'm interested in, which is malware related all the time. For reverse engineering, I think I've been talking about this for so long, but I need to do it. Pre-built flirt signatures for embedded systems, combine compiler and C library, and just do Dockers and build this stuff, and then convert that into flirt signature and port them into IDA, and so people can do more of the reverse engineering. So I said I was gonna talk about fixing the problem. Yes, I'm gonna talk about that. Vendors, they should stop using default credentials and use per device credentials, even if it's on a sticker on the device. You are doing it already for SSIDs and for the Wi-Fi password. So don't tell me it's a supply chain nightmare, right? You're this close, and the threat is remote. Like it doesn't matter if the password is on a label, and if it matters, then change it, right? Stop exposing general purpose management ports, telnet, SSH, and consumer, put password on your devices, even if you have to roll it on a post-it and stick it, and do that everywhere you go, right? You go at your aunt's house, you fucking 192.168.0.1, admin. If you're in, then change the password. It's just simple like that. I have a demo. So, I mean, this is what I do now. I go at places, try admin, maybe sometimes it's more complicated, like admin linksys, and but yeah, so we can do some awareness training that way. Again, I know, like, they will fucking reset the thing with a pin and then it will be admin, but yeah, you gotta try. People building this IoT stuff, and I know there is people like that, and you need to I mean, here, I know there are vendors or maybe people interested in it, and I mean, every geek has his own, like, oh, I'm gonna build this thing and it would revolutionize the world. Think about scalability and how a feature can be abused, right? How something that for you looks like, it's not, if you send 1 byte and I reply 2 megabyte, it's okay. There's not gonna be a problem with that, So this is what you have to think about when you deploy, and I know until you make it, you don't really care about security, but once you're big, it's too late. So there's kind of this balance to have, and think about that. Also, think about physical access. So for example, no SSH, no telnet by default, but if you push a button, then for 5 minutes, there is SSH or telnet, exposed. So think about the advantage that you have, that your consumers will have physical access, and leverage it. And time-based approaches are a good way to mitigate a lot of the big problems, and thinking of features as what would a botnet operator would do kind of threat model is a good way to prevent some of the biggest problems that you can have. So takeaways, I don't have much, but IoT is insecure, but it can be fixed for the low-hanging fruit problems, and this is what I see in the malware. This is like abuse of default credentials, and now I would like to reverse the stuff that is doing exploits and cooler stuff, but right now all I've got is the shitty stuff. So please, let's make it more secure so I get more interesting samples to reverse engineer. And we need to see what's coming next, right? We need to be focused on that because it's going to be a bigger problem. So we need to keep on at it. You can send me samples, just zip file, infected. Here we go. And I would like to thank Hackfest for having me. It's been a blast. Like I said, 7 years, and I hope that I will be there for 7 others. So thank you for having me. See? Any questions? Yes. Tu amené un micro ou
Okay, so I guess you don't want the bad guys to know that you are a honeypot. So how do you do that, and how do you protect yourself from the statistical attacks so that checks the performance, the response time of your system?
You mean, okay. So to avoid being fingerprinted, you look at what they are doing and when they pull out. So for example, one of the changes I made 2 weeks ago is they would write a file under /proc, and for a Linux system, you can't. It's not allowed. It's a virtual file system. But on the honeypot, it worked. So what I did is I implemented a check, an additional check that would say, oh, if you're trying to write here, this is a specific system directory that you can't write. And as soon as we changed that, then we would go further. It would fingerprint other things. And I implemented the other things that they were looking. They were creating files and removing them, but some of the time, the files wouldn't exist, and the honeypot would not give an error. So I just made sure that the logic to give an error when it's supposed to happen was there. And so then, so we'll run these honeypots, collect new samples, but then in 1 year, they will have adapted to our new way, right? So in 1 year, I need to look at this again and, you know, be one step ahead type deal, right?
Well, will you try to emulate the performance?
Okay, so no, they're not doing this yet, but at some point we will have. But on Windows, like they do tick count and to determine if it's on a VM or not. And there's stuff to be done or to do in that area, I agree. But on Linux systems right now, I haven't seen that type of fingerprinting.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Any other question? All right, thank you guys. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed.